It happened when we were running dark under the Pacific. No lights, no chatter, just the kind of silence that crawls into your ears and takes up residence. We were at periscope depth, sliding along a thermal layer like a rumor, and the XO had just called for a NAV check. I was at the plotting table with a grease pencil between my fingers, doing the math my body could do even if my brain ever quit. Speed, drift, current, when the message queue blinked. It wasn't a family emergency. It wasn't anything like that. It was a stack of notifications that would have looked like nothing to anyone else. To me, it felt like someone had cracked a glow stick inside my chest and told me to watch the color spread. You don't get to scroll at sea. Not really. Communications come filtered, delayed, condensed, chewed up by protocol until they're safe to swallow. But the boat had a morale feed. Censored headlines, curated bulletins, sanitized little postcards from shore life. Mine included a photo that somehow slipped in beneath the sieve. Eliana at a neon-soaked bar in Pacific Beach, eyes glazed, arms thrown around a stranger whose face was half in shadow. The caption, "Finally breathing again." That phrase. I could hear her voice saying it. Breathing again. Like the last 4 years she spent with me had been hypoxia. If you've never been inside a submarine at night, it's not just dark, it's red. The control room glows in these dull, brooding reds to preserve night vision. It makes everyone's face look like they're halfway through a bottle and thinking better of it. You can hear a pencil drop from the next space over. You can hear your own pulse if you let it. In that red fog, looking at that photo, I felt something slow and basic slither through me and put its hands around my throat. I didn't blow up. Not then. I put the screen away, finished my check, and briefed the XO. We were fine. Better than fine. The ocean was cooperating for once. Outside, a moon you couldn't see was pulling at the black water like a bored god. Inside, I kept moving because the trick to not drowning is to count until you forget why you started. The thing about the Navy is it trains you to catalog, not catastrophize. You list it, you label it, you log it. I made myself a mental log. Eliana's words from a week before, "I just want a little space, Drew. To be 20-something while I'm still 20-something." That's how she'd phrased it, like a riddle with a countdown attached. My words, "We can do space," said like a man patching a hole with his hands because the toolbox is on a different boat. She'd cried on my shoulder at the pier when we departed. She said, "I love you, I swear, I just need to feel something." She framed it like an experiment you conduct in a lab with goggles on. I kissed the top of her head, said I'd be home in 5 weeks, and made a silent deal with whatever lives beneath the waves. "If you get me back safe, I'll fix this. I'll fix us." The ocean said nothing. Our boat, USS Meriwether, a fast attack that 8 miles for breakfast, ran south into exercises. We did hide and seek with ships bigger than cities. We mapped currents off Baja that curled like sleeping cats. We listened. Sonar is just listening with degree and patience. The ocean is a crowded theater, but most of the actors whisper. My world shrank to water density numbers and acoustic footprints and the rhythm of a mess hall that never really rests. Men told the same jokes they'd been telling since diesel boats, laughing like they were new every time. On my rack, I read stale paperbacks, the kind that smelled like other people's hands. If you want to know how I got here, I'm Lieutenant Commander Andrew Drew Maddox, Navigation and Weapons. Torpedo tubes are my front porch. Charts are my religion. Calm under pressure isn't a personality trait, it's the tax you pay to be allowed in the room. When alarms sound, you shrink until only the part of you that knows what to do is left standing. It's a weird way to live, and an even weirder way to love someone who lives on land. Eliana never asked for the ocean. She asked for me, and I brought the ocean along like a third wheel that refused to quit the group chat. At first, she liked the narrative. Sailor boyfriend, salt-wet reunions at the pier, slow-motion hugs, me lifting her off her feet like a recruiting poster. She liked the uniforms. She liked telling her parents I was deployed, which made me both valorous and temporarily absent. A fantasy action figure you can pose on your mantle until you get bored and want something that talks back. Somewhere between year 3 and the rear deck of her 20s, she started looking over my shoulder, past me, toward a world that was loud and lit and didn't smell like whale breath. "You're so calm," she'd say, like it was a compliment wrapped around a complaint. Calm was my job. She wanted spark. Lightning. She wanted to feel like throwing a glass just to watch it shatter. The night I saw that photo, I cataloged. I logged. I folded the feeling like it was laundry and put it away. The next morning, in the tiny stainless steel mirror that turns every face into a confession, I looked at the man staring back. Bloodshot, jaw tight, a line between his eyebrows you could dock a skiff in. I told him, "You get through the next 3 weeks. Then you deal." We came home on a Tuesday that felt like it had rain in its pockets. Pearl Harbor was all cranes and gray and gulls that scolded you for existing. The pier smelled like diesel and wet rope. Wives and girlfriends waited with teeth they'd whitened and dresses they'd steamed, and kids with signs like, "Welcome home, Daddy," that made even the meanest among us go quiet for a beat. Eliana wasn't there. She had texted "so proud of you, brunch when you're rested?" Which is like telling a marathoner you'll clap for him at the after party. I showered until my skin felt like it belonged to someone else. I shaved. I put on a clean shirt that didn't know anything about ballast. I picked a place she liked. Beach adjacent, artfully distressed, the kind of bar where plants dangle from the ceiling and nobody admits they're thirsty. I got there first. Ordered club soda because petty righteousness goes flat if you spike it. She walked in 10 minutes late with sunglasses on, like a person who's famous for breaking hearts and trying not to be recognized. She pulled them off. She looked good in the weaponized way people look good when they're about to ask you to forgive something you haven't seen yet. She hugged me like we'd bumped into each other at a mutual friend's house. Her hair smelled like coconut and this expensive kind of sweat you only get from dancing under those imported neon lights that wish they were Tokyo. "Hey, sailor," she said, and this would be the part in a savvy story where I say that's when I knew. Truth is, I knew on the boat. The hug only confirmed it, all shoulder, no weight. "How's breathing?" I said. Her mouth did a little crash. "That was a caption," she said, sinking into her chair. "You saw it." "Morale feed," I said. "Sanitized. Guess the filter's having an off day." She looked past me to the window as if the horizon had the script she wanted. "Drew, you wanted space," I said. "How's the square footage?" Her jaw worked. For a second, the Eliana I loved was there, brown eyes you could walk into and not come out for hours, that smirk like she was about to beat you at your own game, the cut on her cheekbone from the time a surfboard fin had clipped her. Then something colder replaced her. Not mean. Not cruel. Just detached, like the surgeon who's about to tell you your leg looked better in the catalog. "I needed to know who I am," she said. "Without you. Without Navy schedules dictating whether I can touch my boyfriend or not." I went out. I danced. I kissed some people. She glanced at me to see if kissed was going to be enough dishonesty to pass inspection. "I made mistakes." "How many mistakes?" I asked. My voice wasn't loud. Calm isn't quiet, by the way. Calm is what you use when you don't want to give the other side your depth. Does it matter?" she asked. The server appeared, all tattoos and competence. Eliana ordered a margarita like she was solving a math problem. I ordered another club soda because I wanted to stay inside the feeling long enough to label it properly. You can't navigate through fog if you pretend it's sunshine. "It matters to me," I said. She took a breath. "3," she said, "the way people say a PIN code. But the point is, it wasn't about them. It was about me realizing I'm not ready to be the person you need." I looked down at my hands. Calluses that don't quite match the story I tell about myself. I thought of pressure hulls and crushed depth and how a boat tells you its limits if you're listening. Most people think betrayal is a thunderclap, a sudden crack across the sky. Sometimes it's just erosion. Sometimes it's looking at a woman you had planned a future with and realizing she took a sander to the life you built because the texture made her skin itch. "You could have said it straight," I said. "Before the dancing. Before the kissing. Before the captions." "I did," she said, and here's the thing, I think she believes that. Somewhere inside her, she circled the drain for months and called it communication because she said the word space and I nodded like a test dummy. "Okay," I said when what I meant was not okay. "So here we are." She reached across the table, touched the back of my hand with fingers that trembled just enough to make a case for mercy. "I love you," she said. "That's the worst part." "Is it?" I said. "Because from my seat, the worst part is you loved me with your mouth while your feet walked out the door." I didn't say it loud. I didn't have to. The sentence landed between us like a wet rope. Her throat tightened. "I'm being honest now," she said. "You're being honest at the credits," I said. The movie already played. Her drink arrived. The salt on the rim looked like the ocean had cried just for her. She didn't touch it. She looked at me with a kind of plea I recognized from sailors staring down a squall line. "Tell me the way out that doesn't cost me anything." I didn't have one. That's above my pay grade. Are we done? She asked. I thought about my rack on the boat. The way I sometimes braced a hand on the overhead in rough seas so I wouldn't brain myself. I thought about how I'd learned to sleep in a world that shook. I thought how much I'd loved being the stable thing in her otherwise loud life. I could keep doing that. I could keep being the rock she leached color from. And I'd wake up at 40 with a smile that didn't reach my eyes and an itch I couldn't scratch because it would mean admitting I'd wasted something I didn't have enough of to begin with, time. Yeah, I said, and the word felt like exhaling after a deep dive you weren't sure you'd surface from. We're done. She nodded. Tears hung there indecisive. You're not even going to fight for us? She said, and there it was, the line people throw when they want you to carry them out of the mess they made without asking you to call it what it is. I fought for us, I said. I did it when you were sleeping in and I was making breakfast and your phone kept lighting up at 2 a.m. with names I didn't recognize. I did it when I told myself, space, was a plan and not a loophole. I did it when I walked onto that submarine and told myself we'd fix it when I came home. I fought like hell. I just didn't post about it. She flinched. The server, sensing a storm he couldn't chart, dropped our check without a word. I paid because the last thing I wanted was a ledger between us. We walked out into the coastal glare. The afternoon was rude with sunshine. People laughed at nothing with their whole teeth. The world kept having the audacity to exist. We stood there in front of a mural that said something like love in cursive so big a drone could read it. She reached for me again with her eyes and I stepped back because sometimes mercy looks like not letting someone rehearse a goodbye they'll never perform correctly. Take care of yourself, Tiff, I said. Wear sunscreen. Drink water. Breathe, I guess. She made a face that was half laugh and half sob, wiped her cheek like she was erasing a mistake and walked away. I watched her go until a delivery truck cut her in half and then in thirds and then she was gone. Breakups are loud in your head and quiet everywhere else. I went home. I washed a glass twice. I stared at my couch like it had a plan for me. Around 10, my buddy Alvarez, sonar tech with a mean ping and a meaner barbecue, called. He didn't say you okay? He said, I have ribs. Which is the kind of friendship that has a railing around it. His place smelled like a spice rack got drafted. We sat on his lanai while the island did its soft night noises. He handed me a beer I didn't want and did not want. So, he said. So, I said. He waited. Silence is a tool. He knows it like I do. She's out, I said. I'm out. We're out. He nodded like I'd told him the speed of sound. She step out on you? I thought about the photo. The caption. The math she'd handed me. Yeah, I said. 3 times that she'll admit to. The rest is statistical noise. He scrubbed a hand over his jaw. I'm not going to tell you you're better off, he said. That's a thing people say when they want the conversation to end. I will tell you this. Some boats look good in the catalog but they scream at 30 knots. You can still ride them. You just can't hear yourself think. I laughed because metaphors shouldn't work and then they do. I can't do screaming, I said. My job is listening. He clinked his bottle against mine. Then be lonely for a minute, he said. Listen to yourself. I did. The minute became a week and then a month. I ran before dawn until the sun saw me and decided I could live. I learned guitar badly. I fixed the closet door that had been crooked since the Clinton administration. I slept like the Navy owed me interest. I stopped checking her socials after the 20th time my stomach tried to leave my body. I did not text her on her birthday. I did not craft long emails that sounded like novels and begged like dogs. I did not inventory my worth like a yard sale. I ate eggs. I made my rack every morning because muscle memory is a kind of prayer. Three weeks after the break, I walked into a used bookstore with no intention and came out with a first edition of a book my mother loved. Some old travelogue about maps and the men who made them. The woman behind the counter rang me up. She had forearms like she lifted more than paper and a smile that stayed put even when it wasn't being watched. Her name tag said Hazel in cheerful block letters like a note you'd leave yourself so you don't forget to be kind. She said, "Careful, that one will make you want to become someone else." "Too late," I said, because sometimes your mouth finds your honesty before your brain wraps it in polite paper. She raised an eyebrow. "New self working out?" "Beta version," I said. "Might crash." She handed me the book, her fingers sure. "Back up your heart," she said, like it was a thing you can store on a thumb drive. I walked out into late light, the spine of the book warm in my palm, and felt something shift that didn't announce itself with a trumpet. Just a click like a latch finding its keeper. If this reads like I was fine, I wasn't. I avoided the beach for a while because the water felt like picking a fight with a concept. I avoided the bar where we'd broken up because chairs remember you. I avoided my own mirror some mornings because the calm in my eyes looked like surrender if I stared too long. But grief is a disciplined animal if you feed it the same time every day. It lays down. It lets you walk past without biting you just to feel alive. 2 months after the breakup, I got orders to head back out for a short run. Training evals, the kind of hop that exists to remind you you're a number in a system that needs you even when you don't need it back. We drilled emergency blows until my teeth clacked. We flooded a tube and unflooded it and flooded it again because competence is repetition pretending to be talent. And in the dead space between tasks, I caught myself not thinking about her. That felt like cheating on the person I used to be with the person I might become. We pulled back in on a Friday that looked like the island had painted itself too bright. I showered. I shaved. I thought about calling Alvarez and telling him to light the coals. Instead, I walked into that bookstore again. Hazel looked up, not surprised. Good smiles never are. "You survived," she said. "Boat tried to kill me, failed," I said. "I filed a grievance." She nodded solemnly. "Boats are petty like that." She tapped the counter. "You look less haunted." "Free trial ended," I said. "Decided to subscribe to sanity." She laughed. It wasn't loud. It was confident. She slid a book toward me, essays about paying attention. "This one's cruel and kind in equal measure," she said. "If you underline in pen, I'll judge you, but I'll forgive you if the lines are good." "I only underline in pencil," I said. "Officer energy," she said. "Measured. Erasable." "Guilty," I said. I took the book. I took the smile. I took the idea that maybe the ocean wasn't the only thing worth listening to. Back home, my phone lit up with a number I knew like an old bruise. Ileana. I didn't answer. 2 minutes later, "Can we talk?" 10 minutes after that, I messed up. Then, a photo from her couch, eyes swollen, the kind of self-portrait you send when you want someone to hug you without asking why you set yourself on fire. I put the phone face down on the counter and made coffee like it could be armor. The thing about silence is it can be a punishment or a boundary. I chose boundary. That night, I walked to the water anyway. The beach was cooling off, the sand still warm enough to pretend. The ocean breathed like a big animal. Kids flung frisbees at the idea of tomorrow. I stood there and felt the part of me that wanted to fix things curl up at my feet like a loyal dog. I loved that part. I also told it to stay. When I got home, there were 3 more texts. Then a voicemail. I listened because I'm not cruel. Her voice was jagged. "Drew, I don't know who I am without you." I thought I needed to feel free. I didn't know freedom could feel like falling. She cried in a way that wasn't performative. It punched through my ribs. Old habits stood up inside me and said, "Go. Go now." New habits laid a hand on their chest and said, "Sit." I sat. I thought about crushed depth again. Boats are designed with a number. Go beyond it and the ocean writes your ending. People have numbers too. We pretend we don't because we like to think we're romantic or brave or immutable. We're not. We have a pressure at which we stop being ourselves. I'd reached mine the day she said young again and then treated our history like it was a sweater she could return without a receipt. I texted back, "I heard you. I'm not your way out of the feeling you created. Please don't contact me again." I stared at the sentence for a long time. It felt like walking barefoot across my own deck after someone spilled sand. It felt gritty and right and slightly unkind and absolutely necessary. I hit send. The read receipt popped up. Then nothing for 1 minute. 2, 5. Then, okay. Then, I'm sorry. Then nothing again. I put my phone in a drawer like a relic I didn't know if I'd worship or forget. I slept. This time I didn't dream of neon. I dreamed of water the color of forgiveness, which is to say, clear, cold, and honest. That was the beginning, not the end. Betrayal isn't tidy. It drips. It echoes. It shows up with a new haircut and asks to be let in. But if you're asking how it happened, if you're here for the part where the knife went in and the blood didn't, this is it. It happened at periscope depth. It happened in a bar with succulents and a drink she didn't touch. It happened in the slow realization that love without discipline just calls itself freedom and recites poetry while it burns your house down. I'm not a saint. I'm not a martyr. I'm a man who catalogs because it's the only way I know to stay afloat. I wrote it down in my head. She asked for space. She filled it with strangers and neon. I asked for honesty. She delivered it too late. I ended it. Then I began. And somewhere between a used bookstore and the surf line, I remembered the oldest rule of the sea. When the hull groans, you listen. When the pressure rises, you ascend. When the map runs out, you make a new one. When people talk about breakups, they make it sound like a clean cut. Like scissors through paper. You hear "we ended things" and think, okay, that's done, next page. In reality, it's more like tearing duct tape off skin, stringy, sticky, still hanging on long after you've told yourself you're free. The first week after Eliana and I broke it off, my apartment looked like a crime scene where the body was us. A hoodie she left draped over my chair. Coconut shampoo bottles in my shower like neon signs I didn't want to read. A half-empty bottle of wine we never finished because we were too busy arguing about whether the Navy was stealing my best years. Everywhere I looked, there she was, and nowhere I looked did I want her. I tried to drown it in the only... But grief doesn't care about theories. I'd be brushing my teeth and suddenly hear her laugh ricochet in my skull. I'd pass a beach bar on the strip and my chest would clench like I'd swallowed seawater. Every ding from my phone made me brace for a text. And sure enough, on day 5 it came. Eliana, I miss you. Can we talk? Me, there's nothing left to say. Eliana, please. I was stupid. You're the only one who really knows me. Me, then you should have treated me like it. I put the phone face down, poured myself a glass of water, and stared out the window until the words blurred. The calm in me wasn't peace, it was a dam. And I knew damn well she was going to keep knocking on it until it cracked. 2 weeks later, Alvarez dragged me to a cookout. He called it mandatory morale ops. His backyard smelled like smoke and sauce, and his cousins filled the place with laughter loud enough to wake the neighborhood. I stood there with a plate of ribs, trying to look like a guy who belonged to life again. And for a while I almost did. That's when Eliana showed up. I swear on every sonar contact I've ever logged, she walked straight through that gate like she had clearance. Her hair pulled back, sundress bright, smile trembling at the edges. My pulse went sonar hot. Alvarez froze mid-tongs, like even the grill didn't know what to do with her. Drew, she said, voice soft enough to crack me if I let it. I just wanted to see you. Please. I clenched my jaw. Everyone was watching, pretending not to. I put down my plate. This isn't the place, I said. Then tell me where, she whispered. Her eyes were wet, her body shaking in that familiar way, half performance, half plea. I can't sleep. I can't eat. I made a mistake. Just give me one night to explain. The part of me that had loved her twitched. But the part of me that had watched her erase us with neon lights and Instagram captions stood taller. I shook my head. You had months of nights. You chose someone else's arms. Now you can choose to walk away. Her face fell. She looked at Alvarez, at the crowd, then back at me. So that's it? You're just done? I met her eyes. I was done the minute you decided I wasn't enough. She cried. People shifted awkwardly. Alvarez finally stepped in, guiding her out like a bouncer with manners. She left without another word, her sobs fading into the street. My ribs went cold on the plate. The Navy didn't care. The Navy doesn't care about anything except steel and silence. Orders dropped. Short-term exercises up the coast. I was back on the Meriwether, breathing recycled air, listening to the world through sonar and math. And for once I was glad. Underwater, Eliana couldn't touch me. Her texts couldn't reach me. It was just me, the ocean, and a crew that trusted me with their lives. That deployment saved me. Not because it was easy, it wasn't. Drills at 0300. Emergency maneuvers until my shoulders ached. Sleepless watches where the only sound was the groan of a hull reminding you how thin the line is between life and pressure. But in that crucible, I remembered who I was. Calm under pressure. Calculating. The man who could guide $100 million of steel through black water without blinking. That man didn't need Eliana's validation to breathe. When we came back to port, I went straight to that bookstore again. Hazel was there behind the counter, sorting a stack of maps like they were old friends. She looked up, smiled, and said, "Survived again?" "Barely," I said. "But the ocean lost this round." Her laugh was quiet, steady. You always talk like you're sparring with it. Aren't we all? I asked. She tilted her head. Maybe. Some people drown. Some people surf. Some people just float. She slid me a book. This one's about endurance. I think you'd like it. I paid. I lingered. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel haunted. I felt seen. Of course, Eliana didn't stay gone. They never do. She started showing up outside my apartment, accidentally, bumping into me at the gym, leaving notes on my windshield. At first, I brushed it off as desperation. But then the tone changed. If I can't have you, no one can, she wrote once. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just regret, it was obsession. I filed the paperwork for a restraining order. Navy legal helped. It felt surreal, like watching a fire you used to warm your hands at start burning down your house. But it was necessary. She wasn't the Eliana I had loved anymore. She was a ghost with teeth, clinging to a past I had already buried. And yet, through it all, Hazel's presence grew brighter. She never pushed, never pried. She just showed up. A quiet strength in the storm. One evening, as we sat on the beach watching the waves eat the horizon, she said, "You look like a man finally learning to breathe on his own." I smiled, small but real. Maybe I am. People think restraining orders solve everything. You file a stack of papers, a judge scribbles a signature, and suddenly you're free. That's the myth. Reality? It's like putting up a do not enter sign in the middle of a hurricane. The storm doesn't care about your handwriting. At first, the order gave me a sense of control. Eliana was told to stay away. No calls, no texts, no accidental drive-bys. But it didn't stop the late-night emails. Burner accounts. I just need to see your face. I can change. Remember Cabo? Half apology, half manipulation, all poison. I stopped reading after the second week, just shoved them into a folder marked evidence in case the Navy or the court needed proof later. Still, every buzz of my phone made my chest tighten. Every knock at the door after dark felt like her. The calm I carried underwater started leaking on land. One Friday, after a week of endless training drills, I found a note under my apartment door. I don't know how she got into the building. All it said was, "We're not finished. You'll realize soon enough." I sat on my couch with that paper in my hand, feeling the same pressure I'd felt in the control room when the hull groaned under depth. A warning. Ignore it and you don't resurface. I called Alvarez, asked him to crash on my couch that night. Didn't tell him why. He didn't ask. That's Navy brotherhood. Sometimes you don't need the story, just the watch. Hazel was the opposite of chaos. We started small coffee runs, late-night bookstore talks, sharing playlists like teenagers who just discovered heartbreak wasn't fatal. With her, I didn't feel like I had to perform calm or wear it like armor. I could just be. One evening, she invited me to help her sort through a shipment of old nautical charts at the shop. She handed me a roll, yellowed at the edges, the ink faded like it had been whispered onto the page. "You'd like this one," she said. 17th century Pacific mapping. It's full of mistakes, but it's kind of beautiful. I unrolled it, tracing the jagged coastline drawn centuries ago. Whole islands missized, seas exaggerated, ships painted in the margins like cartoons. They were navigating blind, I said. No sonar, no depth charts. Just stars and instinct. She looked at me. "Remind you of anyone?" I smirked. "Don't flatter me. At least I get paid." But the truth? It did remind me of me. I'd been navigating blind since Eliana blew a hole in my life. Hazel didn't fix that, but she gave me a compass. And sometimes that's enough. Of course, Eliana didn't fade into the background. People like her never do. She thrived on drama, on being the center of gravity. When she realized I wasn't orbiting her anymore, she turned volatile. One night, I came back from the base and found her standing outside my building. The restraining order be damned. Her hair was a mess and mascara streaked down her cheeks. She stepped toward me like a ship drifting off course. "Drew, please," she said. "Don't walk past me. Just 5 minutes." I held up my phone. "You're violating a court order." "Court order?" She laughed, bitter and broken. "You think some paper matters? I love you. That's bigger than ink." "No," I said, calm but sharp. "Love doesn't break into people's lives. Love doesn't stalk. Whatever this is, it's not love." Her lip trembled. "She doesn't know you like I do. She'll never understand what you've been through. The Navy. The pressure. The way you go cold when you're scared. She'll leave you the second it gets hard." My jaw tightened. Maybe she will. Maybe she won't. But at least she's not setting fire to my life just to see if I'll put it out. Her eyes went glassy wild. "You'll regret this," she whispered. "You'll regret letting me go." Alvarez showed up just then. He'd been trailing me home because we both knew Eliana was circling. He stepped between us, his presence like a wall of steel. She backed off, muttering, and finally disappeared into the night. I filed another report the next morning. Calculated. Like logging a sonar contact. But inside, I felt shaken in a way the ocean never managed. Weeks passed. Eliana's storm slowed but didn't vanish. A sighting here. A message there. Enough to keep me on edge. But something else grew louder. Hazel. We started meeting outside the shop. Dinner by the pier. Walks through markets where locals tried to sell us seashell necklaces and shaved ice. She asked questions Eliana never did. About the silence of the deep. About the rituals of watch rotations. About what it felt like to be responsible for lives no one else saw. She didn't glaze over. She leaned in. And slowly she became the voice I wanted in my head instead of Eliana's. One night, after a long dinner, we sat in her car outside my building. She hesitated, then said, "You always look like you're bracing for impact. Like you're waiting for the hit. When do you exhale, Drew?" I stared out the window, the glow of the streetlights smearing against the glass. "When the mission ends." And what if the mission never ends? I turned to her. Her eyes weren't prying, they were steady, warm. I realized I wanted to exhale with her. Right then. Right there. So I did. And for the first time in months, my chest didn't feel like a pressure hull. But the ocean has rules. Calm seas never last. Eliana wasn't finished. The day it broke open, I was walking out of base housing when I saw her car parked across the street. Engine off, headlights cold, but her silhouette inside, watching. My pulse surged. Enough was enough. I walked over, rapped on her window. She rolled it down, smirked, trembling like it wanted to be confidence. "What part of stay away don't you get?" I said. "You don't mean it," she shot back. "You think you do, but you don't. We're soulmates, Drew. You don't throw that away for some bookshop girl who doesn't even know what crushed depth means." I leaned down, eyes locked on hers. Soulmates don't betray each other when one's underwater defending a country. Soulmates don't humiliate you with neon captions and strangers' arms. You're not my soulmate, Eliana. You're my mistake. And I'm done paying for it. Her face went white. She hissed something under her breath, then peeled out of the lot so fast the tires screamed. I filed that last report and tightened the lock on my door. My calm returned, not the shaky dam, but the deep kind, the kind submariners feel when they know the water's hostile but they've trained for it anyway. Hazel was waiting when I got home. She didn't ask questions. Just sat with me on the couch, silence wrapping around us like ballast. For once, silence didn't feel heavy. It felt safe. I realized then, the story wasn't about Eliana anymore. It was about me choosing what kind of life I wanted. And Hazel? She was proof that calm doesn't mean lifeless. Calm can mean peace. You know how submarines have that one moment, the emergency blow? It's when the tanks flood with air, ballast shoots out, and the boat rockets upward like it's clawing for sunlight. It's violent, dangerous, and loud. But when you break the surface you can breathe again. That's what the end of Eliana felt like. It happened 3 months after the restraining order, right when I'd started believing maybe she'd burned herself out. Hazel and I were making dinner at her place. Cheap wine, pasta, laughter spilling easier than I thought I still had in me, when the pounding started on the front door. Not a knock. A pounding. Hazel froze, spatula midair. I knew before I even opened the door. There she was. Eliana. Disheveled, drunk or manic, I couldn't tell. Her eyes were wide, hair tangled, mascara smeared like war paint. She shoved past me into the apartment, words tumbling out like broken glass. "You can't just erase me, Drew. You can't parade around with her like I never existed. I gave you 4 years. You don't just walk away from that." I caught her by the shoulders, pushed her back toward the door. "You need to leave. Now." Hazel stood behind me, steady but silent, her face pale. Eliana's gaze cut toward her, sharp as a blade. "She's nothing." Eliana shrieked. "She doesn't know you like I do. She doesn't know the nightmares, the calm you fake, the cracks under your skin. She's a placeholder. A warm body. You'll come back to me when she leaves you too." That hit like a depth charge. For a second, the old Drew, the one who tolerated, forgave, bargained, wanted to argue. To explain. To prove her wrong. But then I saw Hazel's face. Not afraid. Not jealous. Just hurt that someone would try to reduce her to nothing. And in that moment, my loyalty crystallized. I stepped forward, my voice low but sharp. "You don't get to talk about her. You don't get to stand in this apartment. You don't get to have power here anymore. You lost that when you threw us away. She trembled, rage fighting despair in her eyes. You'll regret this, Drew. You think she'll save you? She won't. I'm the only one who knows what you really are. I opened the door wide. What I am, I said, is done. She screamed, high guttural, and bolted out into the night. That was the breaking point. The next morning, I sat in a courtroom, Hazel by my side, and listened as Eliana violated her own restraining order in front of a judge. The evidence, my reports, photos, even a security camera clip Alvarez had grabbed, stacked up like torpedoes in a tube. Eliana tried to cry her way through it, but the tears rang hollow. The judge granted a permanent order. 3 years, no contact, no excuses. The gavel came down like a depth charge, and just like that, the storm quieted. Eliana didn't look at me as the bailiff escorted her out. For the first time, I didn't look back either. You'd think I'd feel triumphant. Like a hero at the end of some movie where the good guy finally stands up to the villain. But it wasn't like that. It was quieter. Heavier. Like surfacing after a long dive and realizing your lungs hurt but you're still breathing. Hazel squeezed my hand in the parking lot. It's over, she said softly. Yeah, I answered. But in my chest, it felt less like victory and more like surrender to a truth I'd been fighting. Love doesn't survive on nostalgia. It survives on respect. And Eliana had none left to give. The months that followed weren't flashy. They were simple. Steady. Exactly what I needed. Hazel and I built something small but solid. Morning runs together where she teased me for being too competitive. Late nights in the bookstore, where I'd help her organize shipments while she introduced me to obscure poets I pretended to understand. Weekends at the beach where she taught me how to surf badly, and I taught her how to read the stars like a sailor. One night, we sat by a fire pit on the sand, the Pacific humming like a lullaby. She leaned against me, tracing circles on my arm. You ever regret it? She asked. What you had with her? I thought about that, about Eliana's laugh when things were good, the pier hugs, the soft mornings before everything rotted. For a long time, those memories had felt like anchors. But now, they felt like flotsam, driftwood you pass on your way to a better shore. No, I said finally. I regret how long I let her hurt me. But I don't regret walking away. If I hadn't, I wouldn't be here. With you. She smiled, small and genuine. Good answer, sailor. I'd be lying if I said Eliana never crossed my mind again. Sometimes, on long watches when the ocean pressed too close, her voice would echo in my head, her accusations, her pleas. But instead of pulling me under, it reminded me why I left. Why I chose peace over chaos. Why I chose Hazel. Because the truth is, betrayal doesn't define you. Your response does. And mine was finally surfacing. The last time I saw Eliana was by accident. A grocery store parking lot. She looked older, thinner, eyes dulled by choices she'd never unmake. For a second, our gazes met. She froze, then turned away quickly, fumbling with her keys. I didn't call out. Didn't wave. Didn't even feel the urge. Because by then she wasn't my storm anymore. She was just weather I'd once survived. I walked back to Hazel's car, groceries in hand, and slid into the passenger seat. She glanced at me, sensing something. Everything okay? She asked. I smiled, real and easy. Yeah, everything's okay. And for the first time in a long time, I meant it. People romanticize second chances. They talk about rekindled flames and meant to best. But me? I don't believe in going back. Not anymore. The ocean doesn't give back what it takes. It teaches you to adapt, to respect the pressure, to surface before it's too late. Eliana was my deep dive. Hazel was my surface. And me? I was just a man who finally learned when to come up for air. So that's how it ended. Not with some grand reunion or a second chance fairy tale, but with me finally realizing that peace is worth more than chaos, and respect is worth more than nostalgia. She chose freedom and I gave it to her. What she didn't expect was that I'd find more than freedom without her. I found myself. And I found someone who valued me for the man I am, not the thrill she could drain out of me. The truth is simple, betrayal doesn't break you. It teaches you. And when the storm finally passes, you get to decide who you'll be when the water is calm again. Me. I chose to surface. I chose to breathe. I chose to never look back. While I was underwater serving my country, she said she needed freedom, and filled it with strangers. Months later, when I found peace with someone new, she stalked me like a ghost I'd already buried. So tell me, if you were in my shoes, would you let her back in or keep walking forward? Share your story in the comments. If this one struck you, like and subscribe and send it to someone who knows peace is better than chaos.